Hey guys, how are you? I hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing another movie review. This movie is a horror film from the UK/USA, English language, released in the year 2016, directed by Andre Avradale, and this film is called The Autopsy of Jane Doe. So The Autopsy of Jane Doe is about these two morgue workers. One night they get the body of this young woman who no one knows anything about, so they call her Jane Doe. So Jane Doe is laid out on the table and they begin their autopsy. So the police say that she was found in a basement, half buried, but her injuries don't really kind of contradict everything that the police have told them. So they don't really know the cause of death, they don't really know the time of death, is because her body basically appears to be a lot healthier than they would first anticipate. So the curiosity is there, and this is where they start to realise that there might be a very evil presence that is with them that they can't see, but has something to do with the body that's laying in front of them. So as the further it goes in and the further they go into their autopsy, the more aggressive this presence is getting. And so it turns out that this whole mortuary is going to turn into a psychological battleground that is going to prove very deadly, and if they are to rectify the issue, they're going to have to get to the bottom of the mystery of this woman before it's too late. So whether or not they can, is something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now my thoughts on The Autopsy of Jane Doe. Coming into this film, my expectation levels were very, very high. I had this film right up there on the pedestal, and for that reason, I think that's the reason why I thought this movie was a little bit disappointing. Now, if you go into the film with no expectations, chances are you're going to really, really enjoy it. But the problem with being overhyped is that it really does work against the film. I was expecting this movie to be a masterpiece. I was expecting it to be one of the scariest movies of all time, like a lot of people were saying. But because it doesn't reach that massive level, you could be forgiven for thinking it's a bad film. But in reality, it's not a bad film. It's just not the film you wanted it to be. And unfortunately, that is the biggest criticism I have of this movie. But that's not really fair. But it is very difficult when everyone's been telling you how great it is. So although it's not a brilliant film, I will say that Andre Avradale retains what made Trollhunter so good. Now, Trollhunter was his Norwegian film. I thought that was an absolutely enjoyable ride from start to finish, just because it goes against everything that is horror tropes, as far as excessive gore, excessive nudity, stuff that's very superficial, and that doesn't really allow you to enjoy a film as much as you want to. But in Trollhunter, he pushes that all aside. It's a very clean film, but it's a film that really gets you in the mythology. It's a film that gets you in the story, and not a lot of films can do this. A lot of stories are paper thin to compensate basically for excessive gore, and so you got all the gore on the screen, and all of a sudden that's supposed to constitute a good film. But in this regard, it was all about the story, and because it was all about the story, you felt there was so much depth there, and because there's so much depth there, you can replay the film and you can enjoy it just as much as you did the first time. So not a lot of filmmakers can do that, but Andre Avradale really did that in Trollhunter, and to some extent he really does it in The Autopsy of Jane Doe. I thought the story behind this woman was absolutely fantastic, and it was very in-depth, and I thought it was very scary, it was very spooky. This movie is incredibly creepy, and a lot of the creepiness is through the visuals. The visuals are absolutely fantastic. It's a very morbid feeling from start to finish. You feel like you're in the world of a mortuary. You feel like you're in the world of a coroner. It was very interesting the way that they went about their autopsies, so it feels like Andre Avradale has done a lot of study and research coming into this film, and it feels very authentic. The relationship between father and son, you have father played by Brian Cox and son played by Emile Hirsch, was there, but it never gets convoluted. It never prevents it from actually going at a very steady pace. You don't need background stories to these actual characters. The background story is to the most interesting element, which is this woman, and the film knows that. The film knows exactly where it wants to go, and that's what gives the film a lot of fluency. It gives the film that continuous flow that never gets boring, is because the story is always unfolding, and you feel like everything is unfolding in a very important way. It doesn't feel like it's getting bogged down with side material that a lot of other films do. So Andre Avradale really does have an eye for simple storytelling and spinning that simple story into something incredibly interesting. So making something so much more out of the material that he has. So it's ever progressing in that snowball effect, and at the end what you get is an explosive finale that makes you feel as though you've watched something incredibly entertaining. So the overall soundtrack was fantastic. There was one song in particular that will have me really creeped out for a long time. Now, there was a song in Jeepers Creepers, which was very memorable, and there's all these songs in other films where you think, okay, it's a very simple song, you don't necessarily associate that particular song with something scary, but it's done in a way that just really makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. So in this particular regard, I thought that was really well done. There's a really good horror set piece involving a bell, which I thought was superbly done once again, and there were some horror set pieces that were absolutely fantastic. I always judge a film based on whether or not it makes me want to turn on the light. Now, I watch these films deliberately deliberately in the middle of the night with all the lights turned off. And if the movie doesn't want to make me go and turn the light on, it hasn't done its job. But this movie wanted me to turn the light on quite frequently, so it really does give you that creepiness, the good old-fashioned horror storytelling, where because it's so simplistic, it can work on things as far as scaring is, because it's not getting sidetracked with something it doesn't need to have. So I really like that. So overall, production-wise, Andre Avradal has delivered another beautiful-looking film, but at the same time giving you enough depth in the story to really want to know what's going on. So the lack of boredom is always present, and that's what I loved about it the most, is because it's simplistic and it does have a little bit of a spin on that, it makes you want to know more. The story is developing in a way where you feel as though nothing is really dragging. So that was all very good. There's some scenes of violence, there's some scenes of gore, but the gore isn't done for shock. Nothing in this film feels like it's superficial, and it's all working towards something very good at the end. Unfortunately, I did have a few problems with it. Now, the biggest problem I had is that there is a little bit of predictability in there. There were some scenes where I thought, I know what's going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to be the result of this action, and yes, it was. So it does have some generic moments, and there was also some moments where everything was explained to you very fast at the end. And so you've got a lot of mystery and intrigue, and there are answers to the questions that are asked, but unfortunately the natural progression of this film and the way it slowly unfolds, all of a sudden it feels like it's very rushed at the end. So they didn't really have a natural way to let it flow. They didn't have confidence in actually letting the film conclude itself in a very natural fashion and a very slow-paced fashion. So basically you've got this level of intrigue, and it feels like the director is saying, oh, we're running out of time, quickly, say everything. And this character says everything, and you think to yourself, how did that character know this? And it was all speculation, but it was very thorough, and it was very to the point, and you feel, okay, it just feels like this film has run out of time, and it desperately needs to tell you everything. It needs to tie up all these loose ends to make you satisfied. And unfortunately, a lot of viewers, as far as American films are concerned, British and Australian films are concerned, they want answers to everything. And I think this film would have been a lot better if it left it up to your interpretation to some degree. Yes, it could have tied up some loose ends, but it didn't need to tie up every loose end to make it feel like it was very rushed towards the finish line. So I actually liked the way it finished, but it just felt like there were moments where it just had to really quickly explain everything to an unrealistic point to make you think, okay, this film didn't really have the ability to unfold naturally to a conclusion, so it really had to rush it. So that was another criticism I have of it. It's not a masterpiece, it's not an unforgettable film, but having said that, it is a very enjoyable film. Andre Avradal really knows how to retain that sense of fun and allow the audience to enjoy it without the sense of it being really a chore. So overall, although I was a little bit let down by it based on that expectation, I'm still saying it was very enjoyable, and I'd recommend it. So overall, for The Autopsy of Jane Doe, going to give it 3.5 stars. Go out there and see it. Alright guys, that's it for my review. Hope you enjoyed it. Next time you watch your movies, and I'll see you later. Bye.